After Sri Lanka, Pakistan, these countries reaching the stage of bankruptcy, now there is one more country which is standing in the same situation. That is United States of America. Yes. Now I know that it is going to shiver down the spine of many investors because so far America could successfully instill the concept of the safe haven in our mind, right? So you might be thinking, what's happening there? It is because of their ticking bomb debt ceiling. So in this video, let's see what is debt ceiling and what are the reasons, what are the possible consequences, as well as how it might affect our India. So stay tuned till the end. The debt ceiling of US government has reached 31 trillion in January this year. And now, as they are claiming, they are taking some extraordinary measures like managing with the cash in hand as well as deferring the new investments and some spending cuts till June. Now, if the Congress doesn't approve the new limit or enhance the limit, what will happen? Nobody knows. Everyone is watching closely. Why does this matter? For this, we have to understand the concept of debt ceiling. Just like any individual, even the government has to borrow sometimes to fund its operation. So in 1917, Congress in US that had approved and established the concept of debt ceiling. And as per the 14th Amendment done to their constitution, which says that the validity of the public debt cannot be questioned. Now, why is it very necessary? Because just like individual, even the government has to pay the bill and to fund their military operation, to pay the salary for the government employees and to fund the social security, medical expenses, government needs money, the source of revenue. But unfortunately, from 2001 till the date, what they collect, the different revenue sources, maybe the tax and other sources, that always fell short of what they require. So there is a shortage or there is a deficit. So in individual case, what we do? We apply for personal loan, credit card loan, etc. Right? So in the same way, even in this case, to fund this deficit. So let me tell you, from 2001 till the date, the deficit every year was at least 1 trillion US dollar. So this went on adding up. Now, in order to fund this shortage or deficit, US government started issuing treasury bonds. So this is the bond which is issued by the US government, where it tells the bondholder that, okay, give me some money and I'll pay you the interest, and upon reaching that date which is mentioned in the bond, I'm going to return the principal amount. So in simple terms, a bondholder becomes the person who has given loan to the government. Now, the maximum limit what they can borrow, that is $31 trillion, and that they have exhausted. Now imagine this 31 trillion loan on US government is actually translating to $94,182 of loan on every single American citizen. Is it a small amount to be ignored? Now you might be thinking, why America is in debt trap? But it is supposed to be a very rich nation. So what are the factors which is leading to this? Very simple reasons. Let me tell you, primarily two reasons. One is aging population. 1 in every 6 Americans started graying. Now, as per some research, by 2040, 80.8 million American citizens are going to be 65 plus. Now, we all know because of the technological, medical advancement, human lifespan is set to increase. So if we retire at 65 and then you're going to live, say, till 85 or 95, are you really prepared to face that long retirement span of 20-30 years? Who is going to pay for your expense? Now the US government has already deducted the social security tax, right? Now the responsibility is on the government. And if I have to tell you, even consider the healthcare expense. Look at this chart. This will give you an idea how expensive healthcare is in US. Now, on an average, a person will spend at least $12,318, right? And look at the cost which exists in all other countries. The second point is shortage of revenue. Yes, just like us, even they are facing this problem. Can you believe it? Now look at this chart. This clearly tells you 57% individual taxpayers are contributing towards Federal Reserve. So that means the burden is on the middle class salaried person, not on the companies or the corporations, right? So now this has to be investigated, why corporates are paying less tax and why it is more on individuals. Secondly, this chart also tells you why, if you compare to the GDP, the tax revenue is actually less. So from 2001 till the date, the government was not able to collect enough revenue which is actually required to fund their operation or all the expenses. And to add one more point here, I must say that it is a typical, capitalist society. Probably people do not believe in tomorrow, so they go on spending without even making provision for tomorrow. Their credit card bill always might exceed from what they are actually getting. Even the lifestyle is such that they will just spend without thinking about tomorrow. Now that we know the reason, let's see how it might affect us. So let me tell you, as per Moody, if the US government says, sorry, I don't have money, I'm going to default, I cannot pay your interest on the bonds that we have issued. If ever this happens, then the GDP will fall by 4%. Yes. And as per Goldman Sachs, the economic activity will cease at least by 10%, which will lead to the job loss of 7 to 8 millions of people. And federal government employees cannot access their salary. People cannot have access to the Medicare and other social security measures. And even the salaries of military personnel also can be frozen. The second point is borrowing cost. Let me explain you. If you ever default, the refinancing risk as well as the borrowing cost, they both go up. Why? Because if the bank feels that this person is not going to repay, they are going to charge higher rate of interest, as well as many people may not come forward to give the loan. So this is refinancing as well as higher interest risk which arises in case of default. And it is so true even in the case of a country. So far what has happened? America has successfully created this kind of sacrosanct image to the bonds, and they had instilled an idea that it is a safe haven. Whatever happens to the world economy, nothing will happen in US economy. So your money is completely safe in US bonds. So people used to trust. If you see the top 5 countries which are having highest exposure to US bonds, they are Japan, China, United Kingdom, Luxembourg, etc. So if something happens to the US bonds value, what will happen to the portfolio of these bonds which are held by these countries? And in turn, don't you think that will trigger recession if the economy in these countries are already fragile? Now coming to the borrowing cost, there is one more interesting fact which you have to know. By portraying this kind of safe haven concept, what successfully America has done so far is to save interest cost. Means they used to give very less interest rate on the loan instruments or the bonds which are issued by them, because they always said, see man, your money is completely safe with me, right? So please accept little less interest rate. Now on 31 trillion US existing loan portfolio, they are just paying 2.07% interest, which is very low when you compare it with the bonds issued by other countries. So the interest rate and the default risk also has a nexus. I think you have got it. Because of this kind of safe haven image that they have successfully created, American government can save in next 10 years 750 billion by this lower interest rate, which actually is not the privilege of many other countries. The next point is the stock market crash. In 2011 also, America came very close to default, and in the final moment they were able to revise the limit by convincing the Congress that we are going to have a spending cut and that would save 900 billions over the next coming years. But because of this last minute rush and the delay in taking this kind of decision, they ended up seeing at least 1.3 billions of extra borrowing cost. And the stock market had contracted by 17%. S&P had fallen down by 17% because of this in 2011. So if it has to happen now, it will be more than 40%. Why? Because the credit rating agencies will start downgrading because the risk exposure is huge on US securities. And let me tell you, even now, 60% of the foreign exchange reserves held by other countries is in US dollar. Now, if its value depreciates because of the downgrading happening or the default, what will happen? The world might slip into recession. So, now what options they have? First one, seek approval from Republicans. But it is not so easy because there is some ideological difference between Republicans and Democrats about how they view basically this whole concept of debt. Because for Republicans, if you have this kind of debt trap, that means you are overspending. But for Democrats, it is quite contrast because they feel America is a welfare state and it has to get money to fund its operation in order to improve the life of an American. Whatever we have to do, we will do. Even if we have to borrow or fund our operation through debt, it is completely okay. So sometimes during the war, during the COVID, we ended up spending extra because the situation prevailing in the macro economy necessitated it. So that is completely fine for Democrats, which is not at all okay for Republicans. And there are some political interest also. Now, how this game will turn out now, nobody knows. Now, the second point is, there is some crazy theory going on that is taking the support from Fed. So there are some people who are coming with the radical idea of minting some 1 trillion platinum coin and going and pledging it with Fed and telling them, now that you have security, please issue some cash against this. But actually this does not look good and it will not work also. Why? Let me tell you. Fed may be compared with our RBI. US Treasury Department can be compared with our government, right? Now, let me tell you, there is some difference between the fiscal policy as well as the monetary policy. So, RBI or Fed in America, it is responsible for monetary policy. That means it is responsible for controlling inflation and the money supply, etc. in economy. So, it has to function independently when you compare it with the government, which is responsible for fiscal health, means how much capital expenditure you want to do in order to take your country into growth trajectory. That should be decided, and that itself is very critical to decide the fiscal health of a country, right? So that is the responsibility of the government. Now, why do you actually expect the Fed to come to the rescue of the government and cover whatever they are doing? It really spoils, tarnishes the complete image of government, because you cannot mix up fiscal with monetary policy and ask another institution like Fed to cover what they have done so far. They should be accountable for their actions, right? Now you might be thinking, if this situation has to unfold, then what will happen to our India? Let me tell you, in US, out of this 31 trillion sovereign debt, nearly 25 trillion it is from public. Only the rest, 6 trillion, is from intergovernment loan. But in case of India, when you are breaking down the sovereign debt into the debt which is owed to public, external and internal, most of them, 95% of Indian debt is internally financed. That means Indian government raises money by issuing the treasury bonds in open market to all participants, maybe to the public, to the state government, to the bank, to the financial institutions within India. So that means 95% of the debt is internal. It is completely insulated from the currency risk as well as the interest rate risk. Do you agree with me? Now, talking about the rest of the 5% debt which Indian government has, which is external in nature, even there they try to manage that currency risk because they kept it at fixed rate. Now, when it is at fixed rate, why do you bother about the fluctuation level? Because it is not floating rate. So India has actually predicted probably it in advance. So India is actually on safer side. Even for the external debt, India is actively trying to promote the BRICS currency, BRICS New Development Bank, etc. So there is every possibility that in future it will reduce the exposure to other institutions like IMF and then come to the New Development Bank, which is actually in BRICS. And India already has started even the rupee settlement mechanism in order to stay insulated from whatever that is affecting dollar in international arena, right? To say that even if America defaults, nothing will happen in India is little exaggeration, because India is actually holding $588 billion foreign exchange reserve. So definitely if something happens there, we will have to bear the brunt of it. But do you think that it can be a temporary phase in India? Because already as per the data, India stands at 0% recession risk. Its fundamentals are quite strong. And India is actively pushing this de-dollarization and to promote its own currency from BRICS nations. So this can actually turn advantageous to India, and it can try to use this opportunity to launch BRICS currency in international forum. Let me know your views in the comment section.